Hi everyone, my name is Sorcha Coyle and this is my 8th year teaching in the Gulf region. In addition to teaching full-time at a secondary school in Dubai, I also run the Empowering Expat Teachers community. And the mission of the Empowering Expat Teachers community is to empower future and current expat teachers and show them how to lead a personally, professionally and financially rewarding expat life. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to ME Teaching and Learning and Teach Middle East for inviting me to speak today. I'd like to welcome you to my talk and I hope that you'll get lots of benefit from this forum. Okay, so the reason for my title of my talk today is not only because it's my mission with Empowering Expat Teachers, but also I do believe as somebody who has made the decision to come abroad and leave their life at home and move somewhere new, set up a new home, have a new experience, it's really important that you make sure that you are happy on a personal level, on a professional level, and on a financial level. Because otherwise it's going to be quite difficult to really make it feel like it's your home and to settle in really well. So this is why I always say personal, professional, and financial is so important. So in today's session, I'll be talking about the following steps. I'll tell you a little bit more about me and my expat story. I'll also be sharing 5 tips to lead a personally rewarding life, 5 tips to lead a professionally rewarding life, and 5 tips to lead a financially rewarding life. And then at the end, I'll tell you how you can connect further with me. I believe you can't have like a balanced life or a happy life unless you're feeling happy in all of those stages, or at least 2 most of the time. So it's really important to maintain that work-life balance, but also treating this place, it is your new home and you're not just here to work, you're setting up a new life here. So it's really importantly that you of course focus on doing the professional part of your life as best you can, but also to work on the personal side and to also definitely take full advantage of the financial rewards that expat life has. Okay, so let's begin. A little bit more about me and my expat story. Prior to teaching abroad, I taught in Ireland and I also taught in the UK. And in both of those scenarios, as a teacher, I found that in the UK, I was working all hours of the day, yet barely breaking even at the end of each month. And then when I worked in Ireland, I enjoyed it, but there was a real lack of job security. It was almost impossible to get a permanent contract or any kind of long-term contract. So then I decided that I wanted job security, I wanted some sun, and I wanted a good salary and a good work-life balance. So I made the decision then 9 years ago to move to the Middle East to teach. And I can honestly say it's been the best, most empowering decision I've ever made. So I spent 4 years in Qatar, and then after that I came back to London for 1 year to do my master's at King's College. And then I realized how much I missed the expat lifestyle, and then I moved back to Dubai and I've been here now. This will be my 5th year teaching here. I can honestly say the decision to move abroad and live abroad and teach has honestly changed my life. It has allowed me to experience a brand new culture. It's allowed me to achieve rapid career progression. It's allowed me to travel extensively, like you can see here. It's also allowed me to make lifelong friends throughout my 8 years in the Gulf region. Finally, teaching abroad has helped me. It's allowed me to save 6 figures, some of which I've used to purchase 2 properties. As you can see in the pictures, there's a picture of me and my dad in my house in Ireland and also an apartment in Spain. And it's also allowed me to set up the Empowering Expat Teachers community and website. But when you speak to many expats, teachers included, not everybody has had the same experience as me. So that is why in this talk, I really want to sort of like show you what I have done, give you my best advice, to ensure that you make those, you're able to take full advantage of the expat situation and make those lifelong changes. Okay, so the first aspect we'll look at is 5 tips to lead a personally rewarding life. Okay, so number 1, I would always advise you to say yes to everything. Keep an open mind. You've moved to this brand new country, this brand new culture. It's a brand new experience. And I'm sure that's part of the reason why you decided to leave home. To escape the average routine, to have a bit of adventure, experience something new, live a life you could never live back home. So please say yes to everything. Even if it's out of your comfort zone, even if it's something, brand new culture, brand new event, always say yes, because you'll never regret something you've said yes to. I think you'll always regret something you've said no to. And if worst comes to worst, this is how I look at it. If worst comes to worst and it was a disaster, at least it's a funny story you can tell your friends in the future. So say yes to everything, especially at the beginning. For the first 3 to 4 months, say yes to every single invite you get. Get out, get about, go to different meetups, go to different events, teacher events, do everything. Number 2, my second tip would be to make sure you stay in touch with your family and friends at home. When you arrive here, you will have such an amazing time. You will be excited. You will be in awe of this bright, new, shiny place. You will be busy saying yes to all these events, out and about, making a life for yourself. But there will come a time after a month or 2 where reality will start to kick in. You will feel sad, you'll feel homesick, you might experience culture shock. You will really need the support of your family. And so it's really important that you maintain fixed times and regular contact with your support network back home. There is an expat teacher and life coach called the Nova Coach. You should definitely follow her on Instagram. She's from Ireland and she teaches in Abu Dhabi, and she shares really brilliant tips about how to survive and thrive as an expat. And I was talking to her one day about it, and she was saying to me, that's all part. It's called the expat life cycle. And so it's perfectly normal to have those ups and downs, but just make sure you keep in touch with people back home. Especially as for many of us, we're not going to stay out here forever. We are eventually going to return back to our life back home. And, the longer you don't communicate with them, the harder it is going to be to adapt back into life back home once you decide to leave the expat life. So definitely stay in touch with everyone back home. Tip number 3 would be to please give your life here 6 months. You really need to give it at least 6 months to a year to really settle in, to really experience it, to really enjoy it. Like I said at the beginning, it will be so amazing, so busy, so full of glitz and glamour and invites and new experiences. And then you might have a down where you're feeling homesick and don't know if you actually want to live here. You see all the flaws and you decide you want to go back home. Please do not be hasty in that decision. Give yourself the time to settle in to the new situation, the new school, the new culture, the new life. Because I honestly found it very tricky when I first moved to Dubai. It's such a huge city, and there's a huge expat community. And in my previous country in the Gulf, it was a much smaller community that was much tighter knit. And I assumed Dubai would be the same, and it's not, because it's so much bigger. So it was kind of naive on my part to think that. And I'm so glad I gave it. It took me about a year to settle in properly, and I'm so glad I persevered. And because I would have missed out on so many amazing opportunities. I would have missed out on meeting so many amazing people. And my life would have been very, very different had I decided to go back home when I was feeling a bit lonely or down. So really, stick in there. But also put yourself out there. Like, while you're doing that, please go and join Gaelic football club, join a netball club, go to internations, go to different meetups, go to teacher socials events. Definitely give yourself something to do every single weekend for the first 6 months, just to keep you busy, keep your mind off it, and allow yourself to settle in. Definitely give yourself that time. Tip number 4, and again, sort of related to the previous tip where I said give it time. Another way of keeping the bigger picture in mind is to set yourself some personal goals to achieve the first year and the second year, but ideally the first year. What do you plan to achieve on a personal level in order to sort of keep you there and keep you busy? So decide what countries do you want to visit in your first year off. Put in your holidays into your calendar so you know when you can leave. Maybe is there a sport you want to play? Is there a new hobby you want to try? Maybe you want to get fit. Maybe you want to learn language. Like, set yourself some of those personal goals, because it's really important that you maintain that work-life balance and that your life is not just work, school, work, school, school, school. Because you might have a bad day or a bad week or a stressed out time at school when there's observations and different things, and you want to have something to relieve that stress and something that where you can leave work at the door and go and think about something else. It's so important to do that so you feel less homesick, and you're also still developing yourself. It's vital to develop yourself personally too. So it's your new home. You want to have a happy home. What would you do back home? Your life would not be all work at home. You'd have stuff outside and hobbies and different things to keep you busy. So what kind of goals might you do? I'll give you an example. So in the 4 years I've been here, every year I've set myself a different goal to do something. So one year I took German language lessons. Another year I took singing lessons. I love karaoke. Another time then I also took, last year I think it was, I took fashion illustration lessons. So again, it was something to do, something to keep me busy. And also when I had free time, I wasn't getting into the trap of being on social media, or, I actually had something else to do that was more creative and for me. So I definitely recommend that you decide what your personal goals are this year. Tip number 5. And this again will sound so obvious, but sometimes not everybody thinks of it. There is nothing worse than when you first arrive to a new country and you've left your family, you've left your friends, you're just getting to know your colleagues, you're starting to make your group of friends, and then you fall ill. You honestly will feel so alone, you'll feel so sad, you'll probably regret your decision to move. So please make sure you're ready for that. So what I would say, make sure the first thing, your first day when you go in for that induction period, find out who do you have to contact when you're ill, get their number, get their email, and make sure you know the protocol so you're not dragging yourself in if you genuinely are very, very ill. Make sure you know where your nearest doctor, your nearest hospital is to you. And remember, your school may not be able to provide you with private healthcare insurance until your visa is processed. So make sure you know what to do. Where can you go that's cost effective or that's free? And also make sure you know, in case of an emergency, who to call. Okay, so in the UAE, the police is 999, the ambulance is 998, and the fire brigade is 997. Okay, so they're really important things to know so you feel a bit better. Okay, let's move on now to the professional section. We're now going to focus on work and school life. So my tip number 1 to you would be, make sure you take the time to get to know everybody in your new workplace. Make sure you speak to all your colleagues. Make sure you speak to the head teacher, to the senior leadership team, to the deputy heads, but also make sure you speak to people, to admin. Make sure you speak to the caretakers. Make sure you speak to people who work in the canteen staff. Get to know everybody by name. We're all here together, so everybody has left their home. Everyone has got their family back home. Take the time to get to know people, their names, where they're from, their family life. Is their family with them? Is their family back home? How are things? Because remember, this is your new home and it's so important. And it's good for you as well to be kind to everybody, get to know everyone by name, because you're going to depend on these people for help at some point. You're going to get lost, or you're going to forget your photocopying, or you're going to need something. Make sure you start off on the right foot by getting to know everybody by name. Tip number 2, when you're at work, please always remember to make a good first impression. I mean that in a number of ways. So number 1, make sure any kind of event that takes place, any staff social or staff get together or anything that's arranged, please do go on that. Make sure you're showing that you're reciprocating kindness. If people try to make you feel welcome, that you go and attend these kind of events. But also make sure these are new people. These are your staff. These are your professional work colleagues. Not necessarily, some may become your friends, but not all. So also just be aware maybe of behavior, or set yourself limits when you maybe do socialize with them, just to make sure that nobody remembers you for the wrong reasons, if that makes sense. Just be aware of that too. Also, make sure that you do a bit of research on the country before you move here. So for example, in the UAE, we're very lucky. It's such a tolerant country, and you honestly will not have to change your life that much to move here. But however, it's important to be respectful of local customs and local traditions. So just different things like a lot of maybe if you have parents or students who are Emirati or local, or sometimes actually Arabic or other Muslim staff, women and men sometimes do not shake hands. Some will, absolutely, but some may be uncomfortable with that. Just be aware of that. Maybe if not to put your hand out until they put their hand out. Sometimes you can just put your hand on your heart to say hello, and that's just the way of greeting. Also, maybe certain things, maybe don't get into discussions or debates about religion or other kind of taboo topics that you know maybe are illegal here, just so that you make a good first impression and everyone feels comfortable. You do not want to make anyone feel uncomfortable or yourself feel uncomfortable or get yourself into trouble. Just again, be respectful in your dress as well at school, how you dress, in your beliefs and how you say, express your beliefs as well. Just really important that everyone feels comfortable. But as you will find out, we honestly, even though all of us come from different cultures and backgrounds and countries, we have more in common than we do different. You'll soon come to realize that, which is the beauty of being an expat. Tip number 3, you will need supportive colleagues, absolutely. So I definitely recommend that you suss out colleagues that are supportive and trustworthy. And if you have any kind of issues professionally, do share with them the issues with them as soon as possible. I know there's this fear, no one wants to be known as that moany colleague or the colleague that can't cope. But honestly, a professional problem shared is a professional problem halved. Don't keep your worries bottled up, because your life, you've come here to set up a new life, and a lot of your life is related to your job and your workplace. And if you're unhappy there, it is going to spill out and make yourself unhappy, outside work. So it's really important that you can nip any kind of issues in the bud. It's completely normal, and it's expected that you will face challenges in your first term, because you're going to have, the traditional teacher issues, but also you're going to have maybe cultural differences. You might have difficulties with students in terms of behavior, or perhaps maybe English second language, or maybe you're not used to teaching in a private environment where parents are very involved in the student's education. And also you're coping and adapting to a new country and a new life. So please be honest with your head of department or colleague if you're finding it tough. Do not bottle it up. Do not let it bring you down. Great colleagues will support you, and they'll give you lots of ideas and tips to help cope with the situation, because everyone was there at one point. So do not keep these things bottled up. Tip number 4, I would definitely recommend that you take full advantage of the amazing CPD, the continuing professional development opportunities that we have as expat teachers. Most schools would have a budget and you'll be able to attend different CPD, but also bear in mind you've been working with colleagues who are from all around the world and maybe from different other education systems that are different to yours. You can learn so much from these colleagues. And a lot of schools do in-house training. Definitely take full advantage of everything you can. At the moment, a lot of CPD providers are providing lots of free webinars, lots of free courses. And again, make sure that you're continuously improving your CV. Make sure whenever you do a course, you note it down, add it to your CV, even roughly just the date, the provider, and what you learned, because you'll find that you may have intended to only do 1 year, but honestly, 1 year turns into 5-6 years. And then when the time comes to move on, you won't be able to remember all the amazing CPD sessions you covered. So just keep track of it as you go along. And tip number 5, please make sure that you are helpful to all your colleagues. Make that great first impression. Offer to help your colleagues. Offer to share your expertise with all your colleagues, with your school, with your senior managers. Particularly if you've just if you're newly arrived from the UK or Ireland, you might be up to date with some initiatives that maybe haven't arrived to the UAE yet. So whenever you can, volunteer to share, like we've got resources and certain things. Let your head of department know, let your colleagues know that you've got these resources you're willing to share, willing to help. Always look like you're a team member. A really important trait of a successful expat teacher is the ability to collaborate, the ability to work well as part of a team. So wherever you can, offer support, offer ideas. If you can offer to run like a sort of twilight or an in-house CPD session, even better. Do volunteer that. Show the school how you can help. by sharing your amazing expertise and talents and strengths with the wider teaching community. Okay, let's move on to the financially rewarding life. And this is probably the part I'm most excited about. Okay, so why should you take full advantage of the financial aspect of expat teaching? Well, first of all, the expat teacher life is amazing. In this case, in the UAE, we're earning a tax-free salary. Our rent is covered either through a rent allowance or provided accommodation. And you will probably earn the most amount of money that you could ever earn as a teacher. However, we must remember that the expat life is not forever for many of us. We will eventually go home for a multitude. We will eventually go home for a variety of reasons. First of all, we may spend a certain amount of time here and become homesick and decide to move back home. Perhaps our parents might become ill or becoming older, or family reasons, we may decide to leave and go home. Like many of us have experienced or have seen during COVID, jobs were lost, schools closed, and we may have to go back home. Perhaps we might become too old and not qualify for a working visa and go home through no choice of our own. We may have to go home. Or perhaps we might do something silly and get deported. Whatever it may be, we will most likely go home. And as an expat, you have made certain sacrifices in order to live abroad. Like you may have missed out on time with family. You may have missed out on important events. For me, because I have made those sacrifices, even though I love my expat life, when I go back home in the future, I want to make sure I go home with something to show for it, something tangible that sort of justifies why I spent so many years abroad. For me, that is in the form of money, savings, investments, property, etc. So my first tip to you would be, make sure you set your financial goals from day one. Think about why you are here. Of course, to experience the sun, the tax-free life, a good salary, a new curriculum, new friends, all these reasons. But what are your financial reasons for being here? What are your goals? What do you want to save for? Do you want to save for a deposit for a house in your home country, or save for a deposit for a property for retirement? Do you wish to set up an investment portfolio? Many of us only ever decide to come out here for a year or 2-year contract. I can tell you now, 99% of us end up staying longer than 2 years. And time flies so quickly. And you will hear many expats say, oh, I haven't saved anything this year. Next year I will start saving. Next year I'll start saving. And before you know it, 5 years have gone by and you haven't really made any significant savings. I would recommend from day one, you sit down and you add up all your income, how much your salary is, your rent allowance, your flight allowance, any other allowances you might have, and actually see your earning potential. What are you earning? And then from that, make the decision, I'm going to save X amount of this, 50%. I'm going to save this amount. It's really important that you decide, what are my goals and what is the sum of those goals? How much money do I need to achieve those goals? The saving potential and opportunities here are limitless based on my own experience. So please, the sky is the limit. Write down all your financial goals and calculate how much money you need to achieve each of them. Tip number 2. I don't mean to contradict what I've just said, but I am realistic. If you have just arrived here, you shouldn't put too much pressure on yourself to save thousands and thousands of euros, dollars, pounds in your first 3 months before December. Do aim to save at least 1,000 or 2,000 euros, pounds or dollars in that time, but do not do it to the detriment of your social life. You're just arrived to this country. You need to say, like I said before, say yes to everything. You're going to get lots of invites and new experiences. These first 2 months are so important. It's so important that you get out and about and say yes to every invite, to brunches, to hotels, to traveling, meals, coffee dates, nights out, staycations, mini weekend breaks. It's really important that you need to spend that money in order to create the bonds, create the friendships, and create those lifelong memories. If you are overly frugal at the beginning and you say no to events because you're trying to save money, that will really, I think, impede how quickly you'll make friends. It'll stop you creating your community, and it'll be really actually it will not encourage you to settle into your new country well. So enjoy for the first 3 months, and then after that you can start then setting those financial goals. Number 3, please do not get into debt. Now you might say to me, how could I possibly get into debt? Look at my salary. I'm not paying tax. I'm not paying rent. There's no way I'll get into debt. Unfortunately, so many expats get into debt here because it is very easy to take loans out. It's very easy to rack up credit cards. The limits of your credit card are way higher in the Gulf than they are back home. So please be very, very careful. I would always say save up for what you need. Do not get tempted to put things on credit cards, especially if you're not good with credit cards. Remember, you are going to have a probationary period as a teacher. It might be 3 months, might be 6 months. And in that time, you can leave your job or the job can ask you to leave. Maybe they decide you're not a good fit for the school. Very unlikely, but it can happen. So therefore, you aren't 100% sure that you will have that job. So please do not take out loans and get into credit card debt, especially if you cannot repay. If the school decide that you're not the best fit and they ask you to leave, you won't be able to repay any debt that you've incurred, and you might end up in jail or you might have a travel ban. So please be very, very careful. Particularly also, I think COVID has taught us that you can lose a job like that in a blink of an eye, or your salary can be slashed without any warning. And if you've got loans and you've to buy brand new cars, or if you've spent a fortune furnishing your new place, it's going to be so difficult for you to pay off the debt and then to start saving. So what I would recommend is, first of all, do not spend a fortune furnishing your place. I would wait, and every payday you can treat yourself to something. Let's do it sustainably so you're not getting yourself into huge debt, because the interest is super high as well. Also keep an eye on secondhand Facebook groups, Dubizzle, sites like that, so you can buy things for secondhand. I'd also say to yourself, your saving should be your priority. So if you've got a goal in mind, like we said, if you've got the bigger picture, you're here for 4 years, you're saving for a mortgage, deposit, etc., then you won't be so tempted to treat yourself. Especially, it's very tempting as an expat to want to go for weekly massages and weekly manicures and weekly pedicures and different things, buying expensive bags, expensive jewelry, watches. But really, if that's going to delay you saving up for your house deposit, is it really worth it? Do you really need it? Or is it better to put that money towards a housing deposit? So it's different priorities, but I definitely, you want to have something, when you go back, something tangible to show for it. Next one, linked to what we were saying after you set your money goals. Tip number 4, please set a monthly budget. So you then decide, after you've set your money goals, how much you need to save, what's your income, what's your outgoings, what's your time frame, and then decide, what your budget's going to be each month. So when you look at this, how can you eliminate or reduce your big outgoings? So things like your, car, your rent, transport. Can you haggle and reduce the cost? Could you live in a smaller place? Could you live in a hotel apartment that's everything included, that you pay per month rather than for a full year? Could you get rid of your car? Can you live near a metro? Can you get a better deal on your car rental? Look at all the discount apps that you can. Can you go on Groupon? Can you go on, things like Entertainer? Teacher Socials have an app coming out as well. Look at the Facebook groups. There's really great groups called Shop Well for Less and Dirham Stretcher. And there you can, before you do anything, I'd always check in there, use a search function and see, has it been answered? What is the best, deal you can get on mobile phone, etc. Always please check 2 or 3 places before you buy anything to get the best price for you. And tip number 5, now I do this, and I know that expats do not do it, but for me, I feel this has really contributed to my ability to save 6 figures in 8 years. And life is expensive here, absolutely, and we can expect to pay more for imported goods. But what I've done, and it always kind of keeps me on the straight and narrow, is to always convert the prices. Know what your exchange rate of your home currency is, whether it's pound, sterling, dollar, whatever it might be. Always convert back to your home currency. And that for me, that's a really good indicator of whether it's worth it to buy. Would I spend 12 euros on this back home? Most likely not. Particularly if it's like a food item I'm going to consume. If you'd like to connect with me, After this, I run the Empowering Expat Teachers Facebook group. So if you go into Facebook and look for Empowering Expat Teachers, you'll find me there. We currently have over 10,000 members, both future and current expat teachers. So it's a really great place. Everyone's so helpful and friendly there. You can also find me on Instagram at Sorcha Coyle _EET. And I do have a book that I released about 2 years ago on Amazon called How to Be an Empowered Expat Teacher, Personally, Professionally and Financially. And this year, actually just a few weeks ago, for a long time I had wanted to focus more on the financial empowerment aspect of being an expat or an expat teacher, but COVID and the job losses and the salary cuts and the uncertainty really pushed me to launch it sooner than I had planned to. So if you want to learn more about how to save more, earn more and retire with more, you can follow me on Instagram at the Financially Empowered Expat, and there every second day or so I share lots of tips and tricks about how to save more as an expat and to really take full advantage of the financial empowerment here. Okay, bye bye.